tap into the different parts of the processing steps of the visual, of how we actually develop vision. The information, of course, first strikes our eyes and strikes the retina, but that information that creates certain nerve signals that then connect back to the primary parts of the brain where the images really begin to form. In the very basic, the primary visual cortex, as it's called, what we would see is something a little bit like this, where we're basically just talking about lines, shapes, colors. There's nothing really there that we can actually identify or see or even talk about, and we're certainly not conscious of this level of activity. So this is really just the raw data upon which is coming into the world, but we can't make any sense of that. So in that regard, vision itself doesn't really occur in the eyes. It doesn't even occur necessarily in the primary visual area. But if we start to go up in terms of the processing, when we get to a secondary level of processing, we're beginning to coalesce forms and shapes. We may be somewhat conscious of this state, which is maybe associated with something called blind sight, where people don't have that highest level of processing where we see the vivid world, because consciously they say, I can't see. But if you ask them to guess at what they're looking at or to navigate through a room with objects in it, they can usually do so reasonably well, as if they can see. So what's going on, we don't know for sure, but it seems that there's a disconnection between the secondary and the final level of processing. So we have some degree of awareness, but it's still not really that clear, vivid rendition of reality. And that doesn't happen until we get up to the final stages of our processing, which is in what's called the visual association area. And when we see that, this is where we would see this very vivid picture of what the world is about. We see all the colors, we see everything as if we can perceive it to be very real. And not only do we have this very real perception of it, but again, these association areas, as they're called because they associate different pieces of information across the brain, connect this picture with memory banks. And if this is a picture of a dog, we identify it as a dog. We may have an emotional response to it. If we love dogs, then we have a warm, fuzzy feeling, and if we don't like dogs, then we may not like this kind of a picture. So it depends on what your experiences have been and how you ultimately process the information that really does create for you your visual world. So the brain itself is really what is doing all of your sensing. Conversely, the thing that I've always been fascinated about on just a very simplistic level is that when you stub your toe walking, when you bang into something, your toe hurts. But it's really hurting in your brain, and it's your brain that actually perceives the hurt, but you feel it all the way down in your